Welcome to the Fiduciary Wise podcast. I'm Marta Hurst, one of your hosts from Fiduciary Wise. Whether you're a thought leader, service provider, CEO, or decision maker, this podcast is for you. We break down best practices, the services and solutions available to you, discuss the latest topics, and shake up the industry norms. Join us as we explore, challenge, and navigate the future of fiduciary responsibility together. All right. I am Marta Hurst, a partner here at Fiduciary Wise. I've been in retirement plans about 20 years, 17 of that on the TPA side. I joined Fiduciary Wise a couple years ago. I am an ASPA member. I am on the Women in Retirement Conference Committee. And I spend a lot of time with our clients here at Fiduciary Wise facilitating some PAC meetings, making sure that things are going well with existing clients and helping grow our new business as well. And I've got Isaac Wood joining me today.
Marta, it is phenomenal to be with you today. As you mentioned, my name is Isaac Wood. I am actually an ERISA 402A specialist here at Fiduciary Wise. We get to spend a lot of time together, enjoy every minute of it. I've got 13 years in the financial industry, and the last 7 have been specifically focused on ERISA plans, and just I've developed a passion for what I call 401k optimization, which is just plan sponsors who really across the country as a whole are just either incapable of or unaware of their fiduciary responsibilities. And so being able to come in and help them optimize the way their 401k plan operates, but also by taking over the risk and the challenges that it comes in being a fiduciary on the plan. So I'm excited to be here today. And actually, a majority of those last 7 years have been in the record keeping space. And that is actually our topic today, walking through what is record keeper, what are their roles and responsibilities, but also what can you expect from them? So excited to jump into that.
Yeah, you're the perfect person to have on this podcast, given your recent experience. So let's start with kind of the basics of that. So what is the role of the record keeper?
Hi, I'm Kate McBride with Fiduciary Wise. We know that managing retirement plans comes with a lot of responsibility, and having the right knowledge is crucial to making the best decisions for your plan and participants. That's why at Fiduciary Wise, we don't just provide fiduciary services, we're committed to educating those who manage retirement plans through resources like the Fiduciary Wise Brief. Our program delivers expert insights to help you navigate the complexities of ERISA, compliance, and the fiduciary risk management. If you're finding value in what you're hearing in this podcast and want to take your understanding to the next level, let's continue the conversation. Reach out to us at fiduciarywise.com/scheduling and learn how we can support you with the knowledge and tools you need to confidently manage your plans.
Well, it's a good question because I think this can get blown out of proportion in a lot of spaces, especially with all the different roles and value that record keepers can bring to plans today. It's important to kind of step back and say, what is the actual responsibility of a record keeper? And at a high level, it's to keep the records, right? But for the most part, I think you can break this down into really two sort of major roles that record keepers often fill. One is that of a custodian, which is just literally holding the monies. And the money is really at the heart of what a record keeper does, right? Because that custodian role is to hold the money, to actually have the dollar sitting there. But then the record keeping aspect is to then track that money. And there's a couple different ways that you can track it. You're going to tie it to individual participants. You can tie it to different sources. What caused the contribution to come into the plan? So keeping track of that, but then also, keeping records over how those dollars are invested and how those dollars then grow, and then how those dollars are then subsequently taken out of the plan. So very much responsible for the monies, which in the 401k space is an important part, right?
Absolutely. So I do think a lot of record keepers serve in that custodian role also, right? So when you log into the website, that's the name you see. And very often the custodian is the same as the record keeper, but it doesn't necessarily have to be. So we do work with some record keepers where you have an option of what custodian you want to use, which always kind of throws my brain for a loop. I'm like, don't they just hold them money? What are they like? What? I don't know. Who's less expensive? Like, I don't know. You see some big names out there, but we do often see them together, especially with the major, like the big names out there in the retirement plan space.
When you bring up a good point, that oftentimes the record keeper, that's the website that participants are going to engage with. And oftentimes this is, I kind of think of the record keeper as like the face of the franchise when it comes to the 401k plan, because it's the most visible service provider to your employees, to your participants in the plan. And along with that then comes a lot of confusion, or can come a lot of confusion at the participant level, and sometimes at the plan sponsor level as well, of what roles is the record keeper filling. They can oftentimes think that the record keeper is doing it all, that the record keeper is responsible for all elements of the plan. So that's kind of what we wanted to unpack a little bit here. What is the record keeper responsible for? And then also, what aren't they responsible for, so that you as the plan sponsor know who to hold accountable for which roles and responsibilities. So that brings up a great question. Is a record keeper a fiduciary?
I would say hardly ever.
It's
maybe
a great
never.
Fiduciary answer. Hardly ever, because we can't go firmly yes, firmly no. Hardly ever.
Hardly ever. The record keeping function is not a fiduciary function by nature. So if there are any fiduciary pieces being done, that's probably an additional layer of services that you're adding on. And so to kind of talk about that, you mentioned that record keepers can serve in multiple roles, and we talked about often they are the custodian. We do see arrangements where they also are serving in the TPA role, or they have a team that's fulfilling those compliance roles as well. What kind of other things are we seeing record keepers dabble in these days?
So we talked about their roles and responsibilities, what they kind of have to do, right? Or what they are required to do, is to track that money by a participant, to make sure that each individual participant knows how many dollars they have, but then also what source those dollars are from, so that as those dollars come out, the appropriate tax structure is applied to them. So they're required to keep track of those records. But in today's world, there's been a lot of growth in the services and the value propositions from record keepers as they grow in size, they grow in magnitude, but then also, which we'll touch on here in a little bit, in an effort to add revenue streams to their bottom line as well. But we talked in a recent episode about resources that record keepers can provide to that enrollment space. So not only can they help from an administrative perspective, filling that administrative role, but they can also provide sources for plan sponsor or financial advisors to engage in enrollment processes. They can also provide resources around employee education, and many of them do, where they provide not only content. So when we talk about resources, I think of resources as in two buckets. One is like the content, the tools, the capabilities, but then also the people. And so many record keepers today will actually provide people to show up and help service the plan. Whether that's showing up for an enrollment meeting to help the plan sponsor and financial advisor walk through enrollments, getting participants into the plan, whether it's to show up once or twice a year for education meetings. Again, helping the plan sponsor or the financial advisor provide education to those individual participants. Many record keepers have websites or in today's world, apps that can help individual participants engage with the plan. Back to an earlier comment, that most participants, when they think of their 401k plan, they're thinking of that record keeper. And so from a best practices perspective, you want your record keeper to be capable of educating and at least encouraging employees to be involved in the plan. Because oftentimes that's the spot where they have to go to interact with the plan. So where they have to go to choose investments, where they have to go to put beneficiary information in, where they have to go to update their contact information. And so if they have to be there, you want them to be encouraged to participate in the plan from that perspective. And so those are a couple of sort of high level spots where, again, not a requirement of a record keeper. It's not required by ERISA that a record keeper provides enrollment information. It's not required that they have a website. It's not required that they help provide education at all. But in today's world, so many of them do, that if you're looking to maximize the value that you're getting from your record keeper service provider, those are things that you're going to want to be asking questions about on, how do you help us provide these services to our participants?
Well, and in our earlier podcast, we talked about the responsibilities within the plan. And so if the record keeper isn't providing some of those services, then who is, and who is helping fulfill those roles? So we do work with a number of record keepers, and we work with some smaller ones, and they're pretty bare bones, but they also are very inexpensive, and that doesn't make it wrong. But when we are talking about best practices, like you said, maybe that record keeper doesn't provide, they don't have to provide those services. But if they aren't, then how are plan sponsors making sure that they are fulfilling their need to educate employees, to make sure they get enrolled, to provide them information? And a lot of these larger record keepers have tools and resources involved to help do that.
Hey, I'm Isaac Wood with Fiduciary Wise. With years of experience helping plan sponsors, TPAs, record keepers, and advisors navigate the complexities of retirement plans, I understand that every client has unique needs. That's why our MEP, PEP, and DC group of plan services offer complete customization. Whether you're managing multiple plans or looking to streamline administration, we tailor solutions that fit your goals while also ensuring compliance with ERISA regulations. At Fiduciary Wise, we don't just offer cookie cutter options. We work closely with you to design a plan that maximizes efficiency, minimizes risk, and gives you the control that you need. Imagine the confidence of knowing that you have an experienced team behind you, guiding you every step of the way. If you're ready to take your retirement plan to the next level, let's connect. You can schedule a meeting at fiduciarywise.com/scheduling to see how we can help.
One thing we talked about yesterday a little bit in preparation for this is record keepers are not a fiduciary, almost never. So what are some, for me, I have sometimes record keepers get you talked about additional revenue sources. They roll out something new. It makes them more money. They're promoting that to participants. So I think even these plan sponsors, advisors, they need to know what is being pushed out by the record keeper. They need to understand the resources that are being made available. If there are direct marketing campaigns or webinars to employees, what information is being provided in those? And does that align with our goal of putting participants' interests first, doing everything in the best interest of the participant?
It's a great call out, because as a fiduciary, so whether if you're a plan sponsor, you're a fiduciary on the plan, whether you hire out a phenomenal fiduciary partner like a Fiduciary Wise, for example, or you have other fiduciaries on the plan, your responsibility is in the best interest of the participant. As we mentioned, record keepers do not have that same responsibility. A lot of them are, not to paint them in a bad light, it's not like they're out there against your participants, but they have a bottom line in revenue that they need to acquire so that they can stay in business. And that's not bad, but it's just important as a fiduciary, you're the one responsible for your participants. So to be aware of what services a record keeper is offering. Many of them are very good and appropriate for participants, but in some cases, we've seen recent court cases where there were investment options being suggested, offered, and in some cases pushed upon participants that were not in the best interest of those participants. And so just because it's being offered by your record keeper does not mean it's in the best interest of your participants. So really what we're talking about here is, as a fiduciary, you have a responsibility to be aware of what is being offered to your participants, to have processes and procedures in place to review those elements, and to have open conversations on a fairly regular basis about what services from that record keeper, what services are you going to use, what services are you going to partner with them, what services are you going to let them provide to your participants, and then to always always have the best interests of your participants in the front of your mind as you're having those discussions. But just because a record keeper makes additional revenue off of a product or a service does not inherently mean that it is wrong or bad or inappropriate for your participants. But you want there to be an element of transparency, especially from a fees perspective. We talked earlier about, we work with some record keepers that do very little, that are bare bones. Those need to be less expensive than record keepers providing more additional services. Like that, it's
Yes.
as
Absolutely.
simple as that seems. How often do we walk into situations and see that that's not the case, right? So fees in and of themselves are not inherently bad. You just need to be getting a return for the added fee and the added expense for those participants. Are they getting added value as a result of it? So from a record keeper perspective, over the last decade or so, I would say record keepers have, as a whole, gotten more fee transparent. A lot of that was forced upon them, but a couple areas to pay attention to specifically is, what are the investments that are available to you on this record keepers platform? Not every, in the industry, we call it open architecture. And open architecture means that you have capabilities to add whatever fund that you want. Not every record keeper has every fund in the universe available on their platform. And so are there appropriate funds on the platform for your participants? Are they appropriately priced for the value that they bring? So having an understanding of the service providers that you work with, in this case specifically the record keeper, having an understanding of what it is they offer, what is available to you to choose from them, and is that appropriate for your participants?
I do like talking about fee transparency and making sure different record keepers charge in different ways, and however that is fine. But again, it's something that needs to be understood by those that are responsible for the retirement plans and by the participants that are ultimately usually paying for those. I want to go back to, you talked about, I guess we talked about education pieces and, potentially additional services that are being promoted and or offered by the record keepers for additional fees. I think there are some other services that record keepers can take on that can be great, but also that fiduciaries need to be aware of. So for example, eligibility tracking. Eligibility tracking, a lot of record keepers are doing that now. It is great when it works, but also ultimately it is still the responsibility of the plan fiduciary to make sure that it's working like it's supposed to be. I think there's so many tools that it's oh, this is great. Let me sign on the dotted line. And then if it doesn't all work out, again, the record keeper is not a fiduciary. So they're whoops, sorry, we can
just
fix it. And I'm not saying
service is offered doesn't mean that it's done correctly.
Yeah. So, and the other piece of that is I'm seeing a lot more in online distributions. So this is an area that is particularly interesting to me. One, because I think a lot of record keepers have technology to help keep information safer than, maybe your small TPA shop, or, there's not a human element that can get something wrong. There's a lot of technology about, somebody's logging into this account from some foreign country, and maybe this is a flag, and maybe there's some additional things we should dig into here. So, but I also think I've asked questions of a few record keepers that we work with to say, when that participant goes online to request a distribution, what information are they getting? Because the participant is required to get certain notifications and information about what that distribution means for them. If they take that distribution, they're going to have certain fees and taxes associated with that. Do they understand the implications of the decision that they are making? If they are taking a hardship distribution and the plan has self-certification, is the participant being notified that, hey, here are the requirements for self-certification, and here's the documents that you need to keep on file in the instance somebody comes in asking for these. So again, just because that tool, that resource is available, doesn't mean that a plan fiduciary or plan sponsor should just blindly sign and say, oh, that sounds great, I'd love for somebody else to take care of that. You still have to make sure that all the right things are happening and that you understand what that process looks like.
And that's another service that you should ask from your record keeper is, one of the fiduciary responsibilities that is most burdensome can be notice delivery. And it's because there are so many required notices on an annual basis that need to be delivered from you, the plan sponsor, to your participants, right? And so that's the plan fiduciary's responsibility to get those notices delivered to the participants. Many record keepers in today's world, for a lot of those notices, are able to set you up for where they're able to deliver those on your behalf. So that's one of the, when I first stepped into this space, it's like the number of things, like it's a full-time job just mailing out notices, because it's like every other day there's a different thing, and anything happens in the 401k plan, you got to tell everybody about it. And so it's like that you could have a whole mail department at your company that's just there to deliver notices, or you could work with the record keeper that helps provide those notifications to your participants on your behalf as well. So that's another one of the areas that I think there can be services there, but it's important, as you just noted, to make sure that it's being done correctly. But then also to understand, are there additional fees that are related to any of these services, or is this just part of the added value of working with this record keeper?
I think about, like, if an auditor or an investigator came into your office and said, how are these notices delivered, and how do you know they got to the people that they were supposed to? If you can't answer that question, then there's something wrong in that process and procedure. We made it like 10 whole minutes without talking about process and procedure. So
it's too long. Too long.
It's too long. It's important that it be in there.
That question, how many plan sponsors in today's world across this country would answer that question this way? What notices?
All right.
Like, don't even know that they're supposed to be sending out notices. And so it's, it's an interesting thing. I'm going to go on a sidebar here real quick, but like,
go ahead.
The idea that the fiduciary services is a time saver. Sometimes we position them as a time saver for plan sponsors. Advisors do this, we do this sometimes, but in reality, it's not always a time saver, but it's always a risk saver, because it might be that the services that we're providing, they're not doing them. They're not doing them right now, even though they're being required. So there's no time being saved. It's just that your fiduciary responsibilities are now actually getting done, and there's a risk that is being transferred there too. So just as we talked through that just jogged in my mind. I think oftentimes we're like, oh, we can save you so much time. Only if you're actually doing your fiduciary responsibilities are we able to save you time.
When you were talking about notices, in my TPA days, we had a very large client, and they did ask us to do notices for a few years. And we partnered with a mail house to have them all printed. And then the whole staff got involved, and we basically had an assembly line, and we stuffed envelopes and printed out labels and sent them out. And so it is very nice that we have at least some electronic notice delivery options these days. But we still have to have those policies and procedures around how do these get out? How do we know that they got out? And I think when I have conversations with people about Fiduciary Wise and what our duties are and how we serve as a fiduciary, initially in my early days, I was very often asked, do you deliver notices? So Fiduciary Wise does not deliver notices to employees. The delivery of those notices is not a fiduciary function. The making sure that those notices went out, that they were, all the notices that needed to go out went out, they were correct, and they, we have documentation that happened, making sure that it's done. That is the fiduciary function. So if you don't have a fiduciary on your plan, there's not one involved. Well, there's always one involved. If you don't have an outsourced fiduciary on your plan, then that plan sponsor is responsible for making sure all those things are taken care of, and understanding what's going on with the record keeper and any of these services that we've talked about that they're providing.
Hi, I'm Kate McBride with Fiduciary Wise. Did you know that if you sponsor a retirement plan, if you sign the plan's Form 5500, more than 92% of the fiduciary risks and liability can fall directly on your shoulders? ERISA's complex regulations make it easy to miss key responsibilities and leave you exposed to costly penalties or legal action. At Fiduciary Wise, we help you manage that risk. We become the plan's named fiduciary, taking on the majority of those responsibilities. We work with your current service providers including the investment manager, advisor, record keeper, and administrator, to ensure regulatory compliance. And we handle the heavy lifting so you don't have to. Our team is dedicated to protecting you and running your plan exclusively in the best interest of your employees, reducing your exposure to liability and giving you peace of mind. When you partner with Fiduciary Wise, you can focus on running your business, knowing that your retirement plan is in safe hands. Let's talk about how we can help shield you from fiduciary risk. Schedule a meeting today at fiduciarywise.com/scheduling.
At the end of the day, there's a lot to be done to offer a 401k plan to your employees. You probably are not doing all of it right now, but some of those roles are specifically fiduciary in nature, and some are just administrative in nature. And so it's just important to know what service providers you're partnering with, what roles are they able to take off your plate. Hopefully, the combination of record keeper, third-party administrator, financial advisor, investment fiduciary, operational fiduciary, that you're able to bring a team together that is able to execute these on your behalf. And then it's your role just to be aware of what they're doing and to make sure it's being done correctly.
It does make me nervous sometimes when we're doing these podcast episodes that we dive in so deep that we might make people nervous if they haven't started a plan about what all it should be included. So it doesn't always have, it may sound overwhelming to people who are not operating in this space on a daily basis. Here at Fiduciary Wise, we do. So we know what kinds of questions to ask. We already know what some of the different service providers offer and how they partner well together. But I hope that we are not scaring anyone away from offering this great benefit to their employees, but offering some guidance on things to think about to make sure that things are operating like they should.
I think we should wrap up this season because we're going to go through this season and talk through all the different service providers. And like 2 point, that can be very overwhelming and scary. But at the end of it, maybe we should wrap it all up with hey, why you should still offer a 401k plan, and have an episode that brings them all back together, and we can have cake and ice cream together or something.
Well, thanks for tuning in to the Wise Fiduciary Podcast. We'd love to hear your thoughts and answer your questions. So drop a comment, send us a message, or schedule a meeting with us at fiduciarywise.com/scheduling. Don't forget to join us next time for more insights and discussions. Next time, we're talking about TPA stuff. Well, we're talking about compliance administration, which is like my old wheelhouse. So looking forward to having everybody then. So we will see you next episode. Thank you.
See you guys. Hey, I'm Isaac Wood with Fiduciary Wise. With years of experience helping plan sponsors, TPAs, record keepers, and advisors navigate the complexities of retirement plans, I understand that every client has unique needs. That's why our MEP, PEP, and DC group of plan services offer complete customization. Whether you're managing multiple plans or looking to streamline administration, we tailor solutions that fit your goals while also ensuring compliance with ERISA regulations. At Fiduciary Wise, we don't just offer cookie cutter options. We work closely with you to design a plan that maximizes efficiency, minimizes risk, and gives you the control that you need. Imagine the confidence of knowing that you have an experienced team behind you, guiding you every step of the way. If you're ready to take your retirement plan to the next level, let's connect. You can schedule a meeting at fiduciarywise.com/scheduling to see how we can help.